Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cage Talk. Remember, every Thursday, another fighter, another story. Today, I have a gentleman who's a retired MMA fighter who fought in King of the Cage. He fought in the UFC. We have Chainsaw Charles McCarthy. How you doing, buddy?
Good, Alex. How's everything going?
I'm good, man.
It's a nice intro you got there. You got a nice setup. I like the pictures. Good.
Thank you. So all those are actually fighters I've actually had on the show. So I had the Jamie Varner's kind
Oh,
of.
that's cool.
Yeah, so you see Jamie Varner, Chris Lytle, Chris Lieben. A little bit more old school. I like the old school fighters.
Yeah, I like that. Lytle
Yeah.
was in the house with me. He's a great guy.
Lytle he's a really, really nice guy, and now he does bare knuckles. So I do talk to him from time to time when he does those events and stuff like that, and he loves it, man. Bare knuckle is another thing that's kind of been blowing up a little bit.
I've been training Hector Lombard, and he's doing the bare knuckle. We did 2 fights already with them. We fought Kendall Grove was the last one.
Yep. Hector Lombard is also he's a Cuban fighter, man. I'm Cuban. I'm from Miami, so I know exactly
That's right.
the
That's how you remember me. I grew up and fought in Miami. Right.
Yeah, there you go. But again, you had a hell of a career and stuff like that. We'll go into detail on stuff like that. What part of Boca are you located right now?
So I've got a gym right now on 18th Street in Boca, and then we're opening up our fighter headquarters for American Combat Gym. It's going to be in Deerfield, between 10th and Hillsborough, by military.
Yeah, that's where everyone's training, either Coconut Creek or it's all that coastline.
It's a huge concentration of all the world's best fighters here. It's like my background originally before I was in fighting was in computers, and we're like the Silicon Valley but for fighters. It's where the concentration of all the top talent is at.
What would you say would be the 2 top spots? Would it be Florida and what else?
It'd be a combination. Florida, Vegas, California are the main spots, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I talk to a lot of fighters, and for the most part, it's either Florida or California. It's usually one of those two. And then,
there's a lot in Vegas too. But what's interesting about Florida and California is all spread out across. Like they got the NorCal guys, which is like the Diaz brothers, and Sacramento guys. That's like Uriah Faber's guys. All those guys are in NorCal. But then you got a whole bunch of guys like in Southern California, which is like almost a whole state away. So it's pretty divided across California, but there's great guys across California. In Florida, what's neat is everything's within like 20 miles. All the world's best gyms are within 20 miles. Yep. So a guy could come down here and say, oh, I wanted to try out this gym, and then try out this gym and this gym and see what the best fit for them was. And so it's a nice opportunity for us to be able to be a representative in this epicenter for mixed martial arts.
That is true. I know they had this was back in the day when I was living in Miami. They had American Top Team in Doral. I used to go there. My buddy used to go there, and I used to go with him all the time over there. And that's where you had, I think his name.
I want to say that was the Villafort Brothers were running that. I think they know Villafort.
Yeah, they were running that, and I know Pablo. I think it was Tiago was also there.
Tiago Silva was probably there.
Silva, there he is. That one, yeah.
Tiago was training with me in Boca. He's a great guy. Guy. What's interesting is that those guys were some of the guys that started Black Zillion, which were the guys that turned into Stanford in a way. These are all, and those guys. The history of MMA in Florida goes back a long way. It was really this all started and became possible because of Dan Lambert and American Top Team and Livorio and what they built up here. And there were some other gyms that were able to enjoy as a byproduct of what these guys had built. I was at one of the gyms. We got to enjoy a really heavy competitive scene down here that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise. Mm-hmm. They brought in all these amazing Brazilian guys from they had Marcel Ferreira, and they had Boca Oliveira. They had just amazing guys all the time, and it created this. There was at one point there was a building that had like 60 of the world's best black belts in it. It was like insane, and all the best fighters were there. And I was like, I want to be there. People were coming from everywhere to be there. And then once everyone's there, for a variety of reasons, some people it doesn't work out for. They go and do their own thing, and other people go do their own thing. And then all of a sudden, you have an entire industry down here that just all happened because Dan Lambert invested in American Top Team. It's an amazing story the way Florida MMA is came to be the way it is now. And now it's like you got MMA masters down in Miami that are training awesome fighters, Daniel Valverde and Caesar. Daniel was one of my teammates at American Top Team. You know, like you've got Kami is over with Sanford. Kami was one of my coaches at American Top Team. I've got my place. I was one of the first guys at American Top Team in UFC. And like we have all these amazing gyms, and there's more down here. Like you could go almost any corner and find like a world-class black belt over in this area. It's amazing. And I remember when I was coming up, I had to drive like 60 miles for training. It was insane how far I had to drive for good training.
And nowadays, you just find, like you said, you go down the street and you got a good place.
You got world-class training everywhere.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's a testament to how far the sport's grown. But I travel a lot. When I travel, it's not like that everywhere. It's a real testament to Florida and this specific hotbed of South Florida. If you go northern in Florida or west, there's places, but they're very few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone has to travel a long way to get to those places. But when you hit like that Boca Raton area and then all the way down to Miami, there's amazing training literally everywhere along the way.
Yeah, I remember when I was in Boca, and Todd McDuffie just opened up.
Todd Duffy, yeah.
He opened up his gym, and it was right next to. It was in a little plaza right off Spanish River Boulevard. I remember because I lived down the street from there, and I remember the signs. And it was again, it was a very, really new gym he had in a little plaza where they had there was a Gold's Gym, and then they had a laundromat, and then his gym was right there. And I don't know how long it was there for, because again, I only lived in Boca for about a year and a half or two. And then I left, but at that time, I mean, it was a small gym, but I remember like telling my ex-girlfriend, I'm like, oh, he used to fight in the UFC. That's Tom McDonough, and she's like, who? I'm like, oh, but
how it goes, yeah. That's how the sport is. You don't get a lot of recognition for what you do, you know. But yeah, Todd Duffy was one of my fighters at one point. I used to manage him and train him, and he was in my gym in Boca at one point. So then when I closed down that gym in Boca, him and some of my students opened up a new one in Boca. I don't know how long that one went for, but it was right around the same spot. And in that same area, there's like Sapo has a place. There's ATT has a place.
Yep.
There's Ravello has a place. There's just so many spots. Like Manny Suarez has a spot. He was an ATT guy. There's so many great guys. And then even like Jay-Z's a road, a couple miles down the road, Jay-Z was a great ATT fighter. There's so many guys, dude. It's like if you're into this and you don't have a big ego and you like training with the best people, and some people they're like, oh, I won't train there. That's my competition. And I don't think like that. I train with everyone. So for me, like this is like a dream come true. I feel like I wake up in Disneyland every day. I get to go train with Cyborg and I train with this guy and that guy. It's like, how much better could life be that I get this opportunity? And we're building a business and we're making money, and we're building great fighters, getting to travel. Like it's a wonderful opportunity that this sports has afforded for people like me, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? Like it's crazy who you run into. Like I said, the American Top Team, the one in Doral when Thiago Silva. I remember my buddy, because he was fighting for them. He's like, hey, I'm going to bring you to practice. I'm like, hey, man, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we can roll this and that. And I remember going into the lobby, and I almost like fangirled. And he was like, hey, quit that shit, because Thiago Silva walked. I'm like, oh, shit. And he's like, hey, he's like, no, don't do that. Like, I was like so stoked. I wanted to say hi to him, this and that. But, again, like he was just walking in like it's a regular day. I think at that time, the first UFC game came out. and they had it in the lobby, so they were playing. He was playing as
How fun.
himself. Yeah, so it was, and I
How
was just
fun.
like stoked. I was like in the corner, like, oh shit, like trying to take pictures and stuff, but not be like nonchalant about it. And my buddy's like, he's like, that's the last time I take you. I was just hyped up, man. Like it's cool, you know, like it's a regular day in the gym for those guys, but from the outsiders looking
When
in,
I did my very first UFC fight, I fought Dave Milazzo, who you had on your show. You told me,
yeah,
and I was like managing myself. I was training out of a small gym. I was very insulated from what the whole world of MMA was. I just was a fan reading it on the internet. You know, I wasn't training with any of the major names or anything. So I got the UFC, and all of a sudden, like the biggest names in the world are all in this hotel with you, and you're being treated like you're one of them. You know, it's like ridiculous. I'm looking at Andre Arlovsky's over there, and I'm like, with my buddy, I'm like, dude, it's fucking Andre
yeah,
Arlovsky. Like, see that? And we're like trying to look at him, but not look at him, you know? And he's so scary looking. We're like, and I remember meeting some of these guys or wanting to meet them, just being scared to the same feeling.
yeah.
So that was happening to me when I was fighting in UFC. I can't even imagine on your first day walking into the gym how that feels.
Yeah, I was
When I
like,
walked into my gym the first day, like none of those guys were famous. We were just kids training out of a garage, you know?
yeah. And how did you get into mixed martial arts? Like you said, you kind of just like you fell in love with what, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. What was kind of your first practice that you kind of?
So I was doing computer work at the time. I was doing software engineering, and I had um, been watching like UFC since it came out. So it came out in '93. I was 13, and I'd been watching it all the way through. And I was a huge fan of it. And I was running like fight clubs in my front yard, and
Everyone
all the
does.
kids would come to my yard, and we were just scrapping, you know. And then, like, you know, I graduated from high school and started going to school and college and started work life, and like I really wasn't couldn't imagine the life where that was reality. It was just like something fun that we did growing up, you know.
Hmm.
And then somewhere along the way, my friends all got tired of hearing me talk about UFC, 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 and they go, "Why don't you go train it? You know, like why don't you go try it out? Like you're always wrestling us in the apartment. Why don't you go and train?" So I was like, "That's a good idea. I'll do it." So I went a couple places, and then I found a place that fit me really good. So these guys in Miami, they run a gym now called Freestyle Fighting
Oh my God, that's
Academy,
right in
and
front
out of
of
that gym,
Florida State. I mean Florida FIU.
yeah, FIU, yeah.
Yep.
So out of that gym came me, came George Masvidal, came Alex and Jose Caceres, came a lot of world class fighters out of that building. Jason Soros trains out of there now. It's amazing talent out of that building. And the Avalon brothers who ran it were great competitors in jiu-jitsu also. Um, so I started training with those guys, but back then they weren't Freestyle Fighting Academy. They were Avalon brothers,
Yep, I
and they were
remember.
training out of Marcos's ex-wife father's Taekwondo academy, which was inside of a garage.
Yep.
So it was Lee's Taekwondo we were training out of. So like that's how I got to UFC, training out of Lee's Taekwondo in a garage, you know. But I would drive an hour and a half each way, and I'd stay there all day. I quit my job. I had a good paying job, and I go, this is going to be my life. I'm going to figure this out until I get there. I can always get another job later. I figured, you
Uh-huh.
know. So I ran out of money. I was living in my car and doing everything I had to do like to make it happen, and I loved it. It was something I was good at naturally. Like I felt it naturally. Like I could do it. I still got my ass kicked plenty at the beginning, but it was something like that fit the type of thinking that I enjoy. It was very analytical. I could constantly A/B test different techniques in different scenarios and with different opponents and start seeing what are the constants. How can I use this technique across all these opponents so that it becomes efficient and it works. I
Hmm.
loved it, and I still love it. You know, that's what I love about coaching. And once I touched it, I couldn't stop. It was like a drug to me. I've been training for 22 years now, and I can't stop. I love it.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm a very competitive person, so it was a very natural fit for me. I like to set goals and achieve them, and then move on to new projects. So fighting fits that scenario really well. You set a goal, you train in camp, do it, you fight, and then you move on to the next one. And then, like, you know, you feel a big risk but a big reward, and it all fit my personality type real well. And you can see it too when you meet fighters or you meet people that say they want to be fighters. You can start to identify personality traits that are similar among most good fighters that like have what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, that's funny how the Freestyle Fighting Academy, man. That's so funny because I lived actually.
Yeah, dude.
I
I
lived.
was there. I was there all the way to my first fight until I got to UFC, and then just for the sake of needing more training partners, I ended up going up to American Top Team, and where I became amazing friends and a student of Laborio, who I ended up with my black belt under. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What were you saying about freestyle
No,
fighting?
man, no, no. Again, like I said, I love listening to stories, but it's funny how like we trained almost at the same spot. Again, you were probably a couple of years earlier than me, but I remember because I lived on 107th and Flagler in Miami, which was like
No, yeah, I lived right there. I had a little efficiency right when I was in UFC. I was living in efficiency on had to be like 16th and 107th, something like
okay.
that.
All right, yeah. So that's crazy. And again, the Freestyle Fighting Academy, I remember they gave us like a week course and stuff. And at that time, it wasn't as big. I mean, the last time I went, I don't remember the last time, but I know
Oh,
they
dude,
kind
they're
of.
going so strong. They have like 700 students. They've been running a mixed martial arts gym for over 20 years. Think about how crazy that is.
Wow.
There's nobody else I can say that about.
No. Wow. And they're still going strong because I
In
remember.
that building, dude,
Yep.
amazing. They when I first started there, they only had one small part of that building,
Yep. It
and
was
they just
only
kept
one
taking over
section.
more and more. Yeah.
And then they kept on breaking it down. I remember the whole floor. There was like a good it was a good amount of space that they broke down and they kind of made. But I just
Those
remember.
are really smart guys, dude. Those Avalon brothers are some of the smartest people in the game.
Yep. And then after that, I moved to Kendall and stuff like that. And it was a little further out, but still,
Is
that's
that where you're at now?
no. I moved, man. I moved from Miami about 5 years ago.
You
I've
got
been
out of the heat, huh?
yeah. No, well, technically, I'm in Texas now, so I don't know.
Okay. What part of Texas are you in?
Dallas.
Okay, nice, nice.
Yeah. And they got a couple fighters here, but it's all in Fort Worth and stuff. And I'm kind of further out from Fort Worth, so it's kind of like a drive.
Yeah, my buddy Travis Luter, I was in the house with. He's up there in Fort Worth. He trains Kevin Holland.
Yep.
Real nice guy.
Travis Luther. Yep.
Yeah.
The old school Travis Luther, man. He's a beast. He's a beast.
Yeah, he probably still is a beast.
Yep.
He was so amazing when I got to do jiu-jitsu with him in the house. I was like, I hadn't experienced something quite like that before. How good he was.
Yeah, he's very underrated too. A lot of people kind of overlooked him because
Yeah,
the stand up wasn't the
there's
greatest.
a lot of guys like that. There's a lot of guys that like either. What I learn a lot about fighting is there's some of the guys that everyone knows are not actually the most skilled or technical guys.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the most skilled or technical guys don't have that X factor that allows them to perform at that level that those other guys can.
Absolutely.
So they don't even get there. Like they get shaken out earlier in Q. Like trying to get to UFC. But there's some guys that I've met that are just like Travis Luter is one of them. Like he just was amazing. He had so much ability. I like if you watch like the way he handled Pete Sell in the house. Like Pete Sell was such a tough fight for me. He was so good and strong, and I mean the way he was able to do great fights with everyone. And Travis Luter literally just like had his way with him, and he told him what he was going to do to him. He just did it, and he went and he fought Anderson Silva, and he had like the worst weight cut of his life. He ended up missing weight, and he still was able to like take down Anderson Silva, mount him, almost armbar him. Like this guy's jiu-jitsu was as high level as anyone who's ever fought in UFC.
Definitely. And they had those. I mean, again, in the UFC now compared to back in the day, I mean, you had technicians at their you had the jiu-jitsu guys. Again, they had we had people that would mix it up a little bit now. But now I feel like you have the overall almost like the
Oh yeah, the
overall.
guys are way better now. You got to be great at everything now.
Yeah.
Like even the guys baseline now jiu-jitsu is as good as like the really good guys were back when I was fighting. Like you got to at least be as good as I was back then to be in the UFC. Like different guys have different abilities for finishing and stuff, but you have to have like the way I look at it is everyone in the UFC wrestles at a college level. They can do jujitsu at like a high competitive level,
Mm.
and they can kickbox at a high competitive level, and they can box. If they can't do those things, they don't belong there. So those guys in the UFC are your supreme athletes. They're the ones that are like the decathlons. They can do all these different things.
It's amazing just the way it's evolved. I remember talking. I had Marcus Davis on, and I think
Oh
he
yeah, a friend of
I
mine. Yeah,
I, I
tough
think
dude.
I think he explained it the best and talking about the kind of the evolution of the game. How at first it was the jiu-jitsu, you had the Gracies, and then after that it was like the time of the wrestlers, and then after that it was like the stand-up where you had Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell, and now he's like we're at the age of just complete like athletic like completely 100% athletic fighter and stuff like that. And I kind of agree. He kind of put it in that terms, and I totally agree with that statement he made.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's an interesting strategic part of mixed martial arts that makes it. It's not hyper complicated, but you can add into it a lot of variables to weigh in decision making. But there's essentially like a rock paper scissors um, scenario happening at all times,
Mm.
and it becomes everybody now is more well rounded. But if you put two fighters next to each other, between wrestling, striking, and jiu-jitsu, you're going to be able to say this guy has better this, and this guy has better that, and then this guy also has better this. So if this guy can use those two things to overcompensate what this guy's better at and implement his game plan, he can win. And there's always that battle happening. It's not because there's always these variables of striking, wrestling, and jujitsu. it's it's what makes it so hard even to call fights all the time. Like
Yeah.
it comes down to who is able to implement their strategy better to make their strengths shine through. And I might beat you this fight because I have better striking than you. But when I fight that guy, I'm going to use my wrestling because his striking is better than your striking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. I get you completely. And again, it's not, and it's always, and like I've talked to fighters before, it's not, hey, I'm a better. You don't have to be the better fighter. You just got to be the better fighter that day, pretty
Yeah,
much.
the better person at implementing the winning game
Yep. And how do you go again? Like you said, you're coaching now, so implementing game plans. How do you kind of start that? Do you start that from like scratch? You go look at the tapes, or you look at your fighter's weaknesses or his strengths before looking at the other opponents. How does that work? Because again, that's probably what interests me the most about just game planning. It probably does the same thing for you as a coach.
plan. Yes, that's a good question. I get So the first step is in the matchmaking. So I know my athletes and I know what their strengths and their weaknesses are.
Okay.
And so when I get matchup proposals, I try to match them against people that I think play into their strengths and don't have a high probability of being able to expose their weaknesses or be able to focus on their weaknesses.
Okay.
So that's step one. You don't have that leverage all the time, but when you have that ability, you definitely are specific with your matchups, especially when you're building talent up and you're bringing them to the level. You have to be very strategic in your matchups to make sure that your guy's getting the specific kind of work in for that fight that he's supposed to get, and that he also has a very clear route to winning. And then he has failure routes, like if things are not going well, how he can recover and still win the fight.
Mhm.
Then once you get past the matchup part and you find like the matchup you like or the matchup that you have to take, depending on what the scenario of that fighter's career is,
Mhm.
uh, then we study tape of the fighter that we're fighting. I have people that I talk to as well as my own insight into what I feel like are the strategic strengths and weaknesses of the other fighter. And then I come up with what I think is the best game plan for the highest probability of defeating that specific fighter. And I come up with a couple of them. And I look at my fighter and I say, which one of these scenarios is my fighter most likely to be able to adhere to follow the strategy all the way through the fight? And then, depending if there's failure points, can we implement either of these others as plan B or plan C? throughout the fight to be able to call audibles to fight.
Yeah.
And then you have like a oh shit plan, like everything's going terrible.
Yep.
How do we try to recover and change momentum of a fight? And then you're always training for momentum shifts, momentum breakers, things that can alter the direction of a fight, so that if things are going bad, you're not feeling like, oh my god, they're going bad. You're like, okay, we've entered this sequence of what I've trained to do.
Okay, I get you. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. And again, um, out of those times that you had the oh shit plan where something's gone wrong and stuff, and you had a fallback plan, how many times has that worked in a fight? Has it led to a victory before? And if you
Oh
can you give a
yeah,
situation
those are the
where
ones you get
that
UFC bonuses for. You know what I mean? And like
ah,
when Charles was getting smashed out, like in one of his fights, Charles Rosa, and it was his first fight back from neck surgery, and we knew this guy was going to smash him in this position if we got him there, and he pulled that armbar off. That's like one of those, we call them silver bullets. Like these are the things that can save you instead of like covering up and getting counted out, give you like a counter to that to
gotcha.
that bad position. Um, I had one of my own fights where I took a knee to the face early on in the fight. I got in a clinch with a guy named Pat O'Malley. He was a real tough dude back then. He was a wrestler from Wisconsin, and we got into a tie clinch. And just to give you an idea of how different things are than they were then, I didn't know anything about striking back then. My understanding of striking was still rudimentary, and I was fighting already high level pro. Like I was a wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy that would pound guys out on the ground and then submit them.
Mhm.
My striking was rudimentary. I was just throwing shots to try to close the distance.
Gotcha.
So when I did that with this guy, he was better than me there. He held tie clinch. He kneed me in the face and split me here, and he dropped me. Like I instantly lost consciousness, and I woke up as soon as I hit the floor. And
Mhm.
I looked up, and that's your oh shit moment. I got this giant fucking dude running at me, like trying to kill me. And I look up, and that's the training that you go through. I shot my leg straight, he went to mouth. I brought the leg over, I rolled him through, and I heel hooked him to win. Like
Right.
those are those moments. Like if you look at, there's a real famous fight where Pete Sell fought uh, Scott Smith,
Well,
and he had him on the ropes, and then fucking went in for the kill and left himself open, got
boom.
countered and finished. And you see those situations that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you train for these moments. And or if it happened by accident, then take it as like you just won the lottery and
Mhm.
train for these moments, so it becomes less like winning the lottery and more like following sequences that you've trained for.
Gotcha. And that's one of the craziest finishes I ever seen. So that's a really good.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, I remember that what's his name, just laid back after that because he was hurt. He was hurt. He got punched in the ribs, and it was a nice shot.
Yeah, Drago. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a hell of a matchup, man. That was craziness. But what's one thing that you look back in your career and almost like the best time in your career? What was there? Is there a certain time or moment where a victory or anything that you remember as the most positive in your career?
That's a nice question. Yeah, I've got a couple times like that. One of them was there was a time where a friend of mine out in Athens, Georgia, Rory and Adam Singer, they run a gym called Street Blast Gym out there.
Okay.
And they were the coaches who trained and made a world champion out of Forrest Griffin. So I moved up to Georgia. My training situation was unusual to say the least. It was different than what I was used to. And it was good, but I wanted something more. I needed to be around more professional fighters, and I knew Forrest Griffin was a good fighter.
Okay.
He was like tracking for UFC. Everyone knew who he was at the time. So I went up there and linked up with those guys, and they were so amazing. Rory like let me stay at his apartment. So me and Forrest Griffin were living on a floor together inside of Rory Singer's apartment, and we were just running our training camp. Like in Athens, Georgia. It was quiet, and would just woke up every day and train hard. I remember that feeling like the most zen that I've ever been in my life. Like I felt like everything
In place.
was just doing what I was supposed to be doing. It felt great. I remember that being one of those times for me. And then, yeah, I mean, I have other times, but I think that time specifically was a really important time for me, and it made me feel like a professional fighter for the first time. Whereas before, I felt like a guy who was just going to take classes at a martial arts school that liked watching UFC.
Mm-hmm.
When I went and I did that training camp with those guys, and they were helping me like with my diet, and they were helping me with my training regimen, teaching me like how to live the life of a professional fighter, and I wasn't guiding myself; they were giving me guidance. I was just always so fortunate to be around all these smart trainers. Like, there's all different kinds of trainers in this world, and they're not necessarily good or bad because of it. Some trainers are more like meathead or Neanderthal style training, and some trainers are like scientific and analytical trainers. And I've always just been fortunate to be drawn to these scientific based trainers. And so you don't just learn like to repeat something, but you learn the concepts behind things. And so that's what I think has helped me to become the coach that I am today, because I didn't just learn how to repeat things that other people were doing, but I learned the concepts of why things work or don't work. And that's what keeps you able to evolve with the game as it evolves, and you help evolve it because you see the concept and you go, well, if the concept is this and we're doing this because of that concept, then why don't we push that concept further? You
Yeah,
know?
I get you. Um, that's one thing about I feel like as the more I've talked to fighters and stuff like that, you don't really realize it, I guess, until you actually talk to them. Is like just the how this sport has evolved and how close people are together, training camps, and again, it's something like it's almost like behind the scenes because I had Dean Thomas on. Again, he trained over there in American Top Team.
Yeah, one of my teammates. Yeah.
Yep. And
Great guy.
he has Jose Torres as well as Jillian. Like you have all those people, and they basically they stay in one roof. I know that Jose stays with them and stuff. And I remember when I was talking to Jose, I had him on the show, and he was like, "Yeah, I had." He's like, I was bunking up with Tyron Woodley, and we're all in the same house, but it's just a camaraderie of just everyone has one goal. Everyone's trying to help each other out at the same time and
Yeah.
achieve. Like there's no, I would say there's no arrogance to that. It's just complete like teamwork, just trying to help each other out, trying to achieve the goal. Everyone together. If one person failed, we all fail. Kind of mindset, and that's
It's a
really
beautiful thing when you hit that.
yep.
When you hit that in your team, like Dean's done a great job of fostering that amongst his team. A lot of his guys will come and cross train with us when Dean's out of town, and they have that, and it's something that I try to build among my team. It's something Laborio was amazing at when I was with him at APT at the time, and so it's something we're really focused on with American Combat Gym to create this sense of community. What we're building is a community, and we all lean on each other, and we're all there for each other to help each other achieve our goals, whatever those goals are. And some of the people in the community are the fighters. Some of them are people that train with them. Some are people that support them. Some of them are the sponsors. But ultimately, what we're building is a community. We're not building like we're not taking like a dog and then treating them terrible and
Yeah,
then making
not
them
like a
fight.
Fight Club or some shit like that. I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
that.
the way I run it. Everyone does things different, Like I've seen people run their gyms like that. That's
Mhm.
why I'm not at some gyms. Like I've seen gyms run like that, and they train like only the top guys, and everyone else is there to be meat for the top guys. And the gym is segregated, and there's friend group here and a friend
Yep.
group there, and
Clicks.
that all stuff. Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from the top, Like, and at my gym, I have the ability to set the tone for it. If I see that happening, I cut it. I don't let it happen. I don't think it's conducive to a really positive training environment where you want to go in every day and be around those same people every day. I want you to come in and be around people you want to be around, and it feels good. And so, because it feels good, you perform good.
Absolutely. One mindset, one goal, and that's it. Um, and that's That's the bottom line. Again, I think you're doing a great job. Again, uh, how
I
many
appreciate it.
fighters?
Thank
How many fighters are you right now? Are you training? Who are you training as of right now? I know you talked about like Hector Lombard and stuff like that, but who else is under your wing, man?
So one of the things that's interesting about my gym that I do a little bit differently than other gyms is I don't really have a big ego, and I'm not trying to tell guys what they can and can't do. Instead, I like to allow people to let themselves be free, and then I provide for them what I'm able to do, which is usually enough. But some guys have other desires, and I like that to be available to them. So what I mean is I act in the capacity as a head coach in a sense. And then I have coaches that I have for striking, for jiu-jitsu, for wrestling, strength and conditioning. And so a lot of those guys are in my building, and some of those guys have their own places. And I don't mind if a fighter wants to go train with this coach and this coach. And I like to just oversee and manage it and watch how everything's going to make sure everything's cohesive. Um, that said, some of the guys that I have in are fighters that are fighters with another coach, for instance. So, like, I have a guy. I have two coaches that work with me that are my coaches, Devin Moultrie and Frank Lester, and they're amazing MMA coaches, and they've been doing this longer than I've had them. So, like today, they had in the gym they're working with Greg Hardy. They had Big Pretty Justin Willis was in,
Okay.
like, and those guys, they come in and they train there, but they represent themselves, but I don't have a problem with that because I don't have an ego like that. I want to help those guys achieve it, be part of the family.
Gotcha.
Uh, then I have like Charles Rosta. He's a big part of American Combat Gym. He's got a UFC fight coming up. I don't think they announced it yet, so I don't want to say the date yet, but
Not a
he's
problem.
going to be making his comeback fight coming up. Hector Lombard is one of my guys. He trains with us, but he also trains with Goat Shed Academy. He trains at a place called Boxer in Fort Lauderdale in Miami. So um, part of the reason why I've kept such good relationships with these guys for so long is that they know that I'm in it for their success. I'm not in it for my own success, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No.
My success comes off of their success, and I don't think of it the other way around. A lot of coaches in these buildings, they use the athletes for their own success, and that's not really my game plan. My goal is to build up the athletes.
That's
So, like we've got Alex Nicholson coming up in bare knuckle. We're trying to do more bare knuckle stuff. Got a great that down here in Florida.
yep.
We've got Rami Hamed. He's right about to get in UFC. He's most talented striker I've ever seen in the world. I trained with Stephen Thompson. He's very similar to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I had the two of them work together in Alabama. Um, have Braden Smith. He just won the main event over on XFC.
Mm-hmm.
Braden's going to be a 185 in UFC real soon. I'm working with an amazing prospect right now, Talita Alankar. She's 5-time Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And she's currently ranked #1 in the world in grappling, and she's going to be making her MMA debut soon.
Nice.
And then I have like got an amazing amateur team. And then I have a lot of pros that come to me from some of the other gyms that I'm not allowed to say their names because I don't want to get them in trouble. If that makes
Oh,
sense.
that's fine. No, that's no problem. But I like that mindset that you're not, you're not about making the money and stuff. Their success is that's how you treat your success, and I like that. Their outcome.
Yeah, man. Like if the guys go out there and they win their fights, then I'll make
Yeah.
money. Like that's what it's all about. So
Mhm.
like I'm not gonna sit here and try to force guys into situations that make them uncomfortable. I
Mhm.
want guys to be completely comfortable. Everyone knows what they need as a fighter. This is a different game. Like as a fighter, I understood what I needed. I
Mhm.
knew what I needed, and I also didn't want to be forced to do things I didn't think I needed, and I didn't want to be told that I couldn't do things that I knew that I needed.
Yep.
And so a lot of these
Mhm.
bigger gyms, they're in these weird positions where they don't want guys leaving their facility. So you've got to work with their coach. Well, if they've got the biggest facility and they got the coaches there, who's to say that that coach is the best coach? It might just be the best coach they were able to get at the moment. There might be a better coach out there for you.
Gotcha.
Or who's to say that maybe that is the best coach for this guy, but doesn't mean he's the best coach for that guy. So like I work with a guy named John David Jackson, he's 2-time boxing world champion. and he trains Talita and Charles Rosa, and the guy is like one of the best boxing trainers in the whole world. He trains all the top professional boxers,
Mhm.
trains Clarissa Shields, like all the top people. He's not my guy. He's one of the best boxing trainers in the world. I'm gonna tell my guys they can't go train one of the best boxing trainers in the world. No, I encourage it. And then when you go there, show me what this guy's teaching. I want to go. I want to watch it. Like that's the mindset that I want to have for American Combat Gym. We want to be like in software development. There's something called closed source and open source, and and I like to consider what we're doing as open source. We are open and available to all information. We're not
Oh,
closed off or proprietary.
absolutely. I think that's what you have to do with anything in life too. You have to be open minded, man. You can't be closed minded because again, if you want to learn something, you got to be open minded to learn it. You can't just go off one thing
If
and
you're standing still, the game will pass you by. How many times have you seen this game evolve since you started watching fighting?
oof.
Like it's going to keep evolving. And if you stand still here and you go, okay, we've got it figured out, and you won't realize it at first. It's going to take a couple years before you realize it, and then it'll be too late. It'll be past.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I want to thank you, Charles, for before I let you go. I want to thank you for coming on, man. It's been
My
an honor.
pleasure, Alex. Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah, man, it's been an honor and a pleasure to watch you, and hopefully, wish you nothing but success for with your coaching and your gents, man. It's truly been an honor, man.
Thanks so much, brother. Keep following us, American Combat Gym. We're on Instagram and all that stuff, and we're going to build some amazing champions. In the next 5 years, I'm predicting we're going to be the top gym in the planet.
Perfect. There you go. You got it on the show. There you go, man. Again, God bless and thank you so much, Charles. Have a good one, buddy.
Thanks, Alex. All the best.